Can everybody hear me? Well, come on up, everybody.
I was waiting for the cue.
That's the cue. I'm sorry you can't see me if I sit down, but I'm here. I'm thinking about all of you. And my name is Kat Bachert. Thank you. And thank you all for attending today. It's so nice to see so many great faces in the audience. I recognize many of you. And I'm going to just kick it off. Again, my name is Kat Bachert, and I work with Meta. And over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. There you go. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see all of you. My name is Emily Joly. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Zoe. I have 1 minute to tell you a little bit about me. So I'm originally an interaction designer, and my mission is to create a platform where anyone can build 3D immersive interactive content. And so Zoe is basically a cross-platform multiplayer world builder that works in VR, on mobile and in AR as well very soon. And I'm excited to be talking with some amazing ladies today. You can go to the next slide, or if there's a clicker over there.
I'm going to grab the clicker.
I'm going to show you just a quick video of Zoe so you can see a little bit how it works. You can access 3D models from online libraries and local libraries, and the neat thing that you can do in Zoe is you can program everything from scratch in a very easy-to-use programming language. So Zoe today is used a lot in the education space, also used for training storytelling. We have psychiatrists using Zoe. We have college students building content, and many different types of use cases like that. And at the moment, we are fully focused on the cross-platform aspect of Zoe, so you can create in the headset, but you can also invite people from other devices to work together with you to build your world. And that's what Zoe does in a nutshell.
Hey everyone. Whoa. Hey everyone, I'm Anurupa, Ganguly, the founder and CEO of Prisms. And at Prisms, we're building a spatial learning platform for students to learn core math and science through real-world problems. Just a little bit about myself. I'm an engineer by training, but spent over a decade in public education as a math and physics educator, district administrator, and found that the tools were woefully under-resourced for what kids and teachers needed. So I started Prisms a couple years ago to build a whole new way of learning math. And so if you want to kind of hit play on that video, can give you a quick overview of what we're building and what it looks like. So our whole premise, you can turn that music down, feel free. The premise of Prisms is that students are immersed in real-world problems that create the intellectual need to learn mathematical concepts. My entire tenure, kids were like, why the heck am I learning this? And so it's through these real-world problems, kids have curiosity to learn core math ideas. And the idea is that they then abstract up from that physicality to create data visualizations, new representations of thought before connecting to tables, charts, and more traditional mathematical models like equations. In terms of the product, we have two aspects of it, which is the core content. Kids use this to actually learn the concepts. And then our multiplayer sandbox that allows kids to practice, do their homework, do more practice with their teacher, with their peers for ongoing and enduring usage. So that's a little bit about Prisms.
Yeah, really pleasure to be here today. Lots of familiar faces, and this really encourage. So my name is Inga, and I'm founder and CEO of ShapesXR. Given everyone is talking about background, I'm actually a computer scientist and IT person, but then pivoted towards more like research and business. And we started this journey back in 2016 by building the animation and prototyping software, a VR tool. And during that journey, during the first 3 years, we realized how expensive, how painful, and how actually inefficient it is to build something for VR or AR. And I was suffering a lot as a product owner, and I was talking to many other founders and realized that it's a common suffering, that until you get some Unity built, you can't really make any design decisions, product decisions. So for startup, it was just like waste of time and waste of money. And we pivoted in 2020, and we've built ShapesXR to exactly address that actually mission, to enable any creative and any team that is willing to build something for VR, AR, MR, or even real world, and actually to ideate in 3D, to design and build a prototype, and even run the user test before actually you run any line of Unity code. And if you can play the video, that would help me to prove my words with some, let's say, visuals. So, and then it's really about collaborative thing, and you today can create in mixed reality. So we really focus on UI, UX designers, and some people use ShapesXR for building their VR apps, like Anurupa on my left, Prisms. But some
I have many plugs for ShapesXR today, I promise.
Thank you for that. But actually, it's also about building and ideating on real-world products and services. It's just like as easy as that. We think in 3D. Why should we break our brains to do something in 2D and then back to this medium? So it's much easier to start doing that and ideating and conceptualizing and wireframing. And then my favorite part is running user tests, because I mean, I want to make sure that usability-wise and let's say delightfulness, it should be there before we start any coding, and we want to be super, super iterative. So that's it for intro. Thank you.
Thanks, Inga. I know that everybody has a different amount of years that they've been working in VR, but I thought that we could just talk quickly on how the landscape of VR has changed from previous years.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm the senior, I think, about 12 years. You're 2 years-ish. She's 6-something, right? So, you know, for my part, it has changed a lot. You know, the pile of hardware has gone up, which we started to sort out. But yes, I think things have changed tremendously, and that's really interesting to see that evolution. And maybe now we still feel like we're a bit stuck in a place where it's still the beginning, and it's always the beginning. But I think, you know, when Anurupa talks about her company that she built like 2 years ago, things are so different now. I mean, the speed at which you can already build, she might say it's not the case, we'll see. Huh? You can ping me on that. But honestly, the way the tools have evolved over 12 years is just crazy. Even Unity didn't have an interface in 2010, so.
Do we have any XR founders here in the room?
Yeah, how long?
Oh, we have, yeah, so, and are you 5+ years, or? Okay,
all right.
Dinosaurs
all right.
veterans.
All the dinosaurs in the room.
I can then continue. So from my perspective, since 2016, so not that many years like you, Emily, I mean, lots of respect, definitely. Lots of things has changed. And I mean, from founder perspective, it's even 3 years ago, usually most of the investors, when they were seeing like VR, they were closing your deck, and everyone was giving you an advice, talk about your startup, but never mention VR. Like, don't even have this abbreviation on your slides. Like, talk about anything, but just like erase it. So that was one thing. Now it's kind of super hot, and you will feel it if you kind of start tracing. It's much less education, because it was really exhausting to educate everyone on, let's say, investors and ecosystem, and even people who kind of involved in that and supposed to deliver that. So it's also changed. For me, one compliment to Meta, not for changing the name, which is huge, of course, but also for us, beyond gaming, it was very, very important that there is really now the stream for XR for work and VR for work and productivity. And it's not just words, it's some real kind of support and guidance. And it's very, very important for us who are building this ecosystem and building this platform. Hi, Pearly. So HTC Vive is also doing a lot, and thank you for that. And I think that the major thing is it's much easier to start building for XR today. The right tools are there, the right hardware is available, and you don't need this setup. It's much easier to travel with VR. I mean, it's now, you don't have this heavy MSI, 2 base stations and everything. So, and give me 5 minutes to demo you. I mean, you're all set. I mean, it's so easy. It's also much easier to prototype your thing at no cost, actually, right? So without investing in developers and like spending those dollars and then test it, you know, when you can be really agile, and this is important. So you can really experiment, anyone, whether that's university, founder, or big company.
Yeah, so you guys touched on hardware and software. The one thing I would add is just value proposition in the market. So I can speak specifically to the education use case. Coming out of the pandemic, it is like unequivocally been established that existing tools will not and cannot accelerate learning at the rate that we need. And so this sort of consciousness and awareness around the inadequacy of computer software as it stood in the educational ecosystem was not the case 3 years ago. People were still making the case for a lot of ed tech tools. Like I was one of those pioneers like pushing back saying, no, this isn't gonna work. But now it's established, it's known. So the types of radical risks that the market is now willing to take, the way that school systems across the country are deploying hardware, mass adoptions. I've never ever seen anything like this in my tenure. This is a question that kind of comes later, but like I fundamentally believe that the modern VR device is going to be the new Chromebook in a few years, and this would have been unconscionable a few years ago. So I think in addition to all the kind of advances in software techniques and hardware and all, you know, I use ShapesXR to be able to prototype and build at an incredible rate, but what is really the game changer is the market consciousness and how they now understand the value of VR in a way that they just didn't understand a few years ago. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have, and that's when you actually get the kind of adoption that we need.
Thank you. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to work with all of you. Let's talk about perspectives on building out a team and what kind of conversations you need to have in order to align effectively with your team on strategy and roadmap. And how has that been going for you during the pandemic with a remote team?
Well, on our side, we are in 2 locations. So we're in Geneva, Switzerland, and also in LA. And we were originally all in the same office for a very long time. And I think for the early beginnings of building our platform and our tech, it was good to be together. But now we're completely remote. So we've embraced the remote, remote collaboration fully. We have people that are in Europe, we have people in South America and the US as well. For us, it works really well. It's just another dynamic, right? So when you're building a team and you're doing interviews with people you've never met, sometimes it's a bit of hit and miss, right? So it's a little more difficult sometimes to assess team members as they join in, and you need to grow and need to hire new people. And I think Anurupa, you can talk about that as well, probably, right? But there's benefits to it. There's benefits to time zones. You wake up and the team has actually worked on things when you arrive at coffee. So, we have collaboration tools. We all work in VR. We can also work collaboratively in our own applications, right? And that helps too. I've played a baseball match in Zoe yesterday with my team from all over the world. It was a lot of fun. So, things are happening also in just the tools that we're building and the platforms we're building. So, and as far as team, our team is a mix of designers and engineers, and I'm originally interaction designer, so we focus a lot on the interface and on the UI. So there's a lot of our team effort in building is in that area more than just engineering.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I've learned vis-a-vis team construction is that right now, I'm about 2 years in. For an early stage startup at my stage, you have, as you were mentioning, designers, educators, developers, artists, engineers, customer success, and product. And the communication through line between all those people, the folks who are on the front line of deploying thousands and thousands of devices, training teachers to integrate this into their day-to-day, because we're not here to give kids this fun experience. We're here to build it into every single day and every single week. And that requires building a certain muscle memory in our constituency. And so my customer success managers, what they are learning on a day-to-day basic in schooling, if that's not getting fed back at the appropriate rate back into our product roadmap, we're going to, and what you're going back and talking about, it's expensive to build. All of us know that, being in the VR domain. So I think that that's like the biggest learning I've had is what are those communication systems, what is that cadence between customer success at this early stage, and how does that really interact with educators who used to be teachers, but they're not there now, and that's a big mindset that you kind of come against with practitioners on your team. They are no longer actually practitioners; they have left, and they're the resident teacher, but they no longer have students. They no longer have end users under their care. So, as valuable as they are in the room, customer success still continues to play the most kind of current and brings the most fresh thinking. So, just kind of would love to. This is not a discussion, but something like I'm really wrestling with is that team construction that puts the right coefficients in front of every single team member's kind of job and function, and then allows them to seamlessly work together.
We were growing pretty slowly during this kind of 6 years, like very, very selective to who will join the team, and we are very lucky. So every person in our team found the passion towards XR on his own, let's say. Every person who joined our team was somehow involved in that and was already sold out completely. And it was very important during 17, 18, 19, when VR was not really getting the praise, but these people being so passionate and so excited, they found this inner, let's say, energy to do that. And for me, as the CEO, it was just just showing that I also believe. I mean, I'm not going to give up. I totally believe, and it's true for developers in our team. Everyone was doing some experiments, building something for XR before, for designers and for business, for everyone. So of course it can't be forever. So at some point we will go more generic. But I mean, it's very, very important that there is some self-motivation and trust that this spatial computing is happening forever. Coming to remote, my job as a product owner, to some extent still, became a blast in ShapesXR, different time zones. So designers build something, I wake up 10 hours later, I go to the space, I check it, I leave my comments, and then there is zero communication gaps. I mean, and then the developer gets 100% what he needs to build. So it's utilizing our own tools and actually building stuff in the meta that you are going to utilize. So, and then talking about team, if you are pursue the career of XR designer, developer, founder, or whoever, I mean, it's really tough. It's a long-term story for sure, but you can become the expert easily. I mean, by easily, I mean that it's still so new that if you join now, you will definitely become the expert. So compared to many other domains and many other areas I don't know, data analytics, big data, machine learning, or whatever. Yeah.
That's really exciting. And we will have a Q&A for about 10 or 15 minutes at the end. So if anybody has questions, we can ask those then. How do you ideate and build for the metaverse using the available tools? Can you get into what it really takes to build out an application? And I think that this is much longer than a 20-minute discussion, but
probably. It's a big one. We can try to start somewhere. I guess for our site, so we're building a platform that's and multiplayer and creation tool and marketplace. So you just need to handle a lot of different things. And we're a small team. We're 10. So I think for our side, it's really been all about the users. So always looking at what our users are actually going to want to use and build those features first and work with them. So we work with about 3,000 of our users now, and they are basically building the app with us on a weekly basis, and that's been really interesting to do. But as far as the team and what you need to build, we have multiplayer engineers, we have backend engineers, and then we have 3D designers and designers. So I think that's kind of what the core team it looks like to build an app like Zoe. But a lot of iteration, a lot of agile, of course, a lot of failures as well in iteration. But I think most important takeaway is get your users into your app as quick as possible so they can tell you how bad it is, and then you can kind of improve on that quickly and try not to wait too long until you do that, because it's going to be really, really hard to have good adoption if you're not just crash testing it. And it's OK if it's not finished, right? So just do it early and then get those feedbacks and continue that.
Yeah, and that's really hard because we started building during the pandemic, and we were play testing every single week with children. And so I literally had teachers around the United States driving quests around in their car. They were waiting in driveways. They'd wait for the kid to finish testing. We were on Zoom with them. It was arduous at best. And I think that I couldn't agree with you more that we would have never been able to build at the rate that we did if we were not testing with our end user every single week. So just plus one on that. It's interesting. There's so much to unpack in this question. Like I feel myself like wading through my scar tissue as I listen to you ask the question. I think one of the things that really come to mind is kind of going back to my previous thought around the coefficients on the people and the functions and how they work together. So when creating an educational experience, learning outcomes are paramount. So starting with the pain point, one of the things that I didn't talk about is that the reason why Prisms is seeing the little growth that it's seeing is because we're going after 2 pain points. One, that kids never ever were taught how to abstract. They never knew how to go from their everyday lives to create a mathematical model. And 2, they never were taught to think spatially and be able to rotate objects, which is the number one predictor of success in post-secondary STEM. So we always start with what's the core pain point we're trying to solve for versus let's create a really cool experience. And when you start with those pain points and create content around that, that's objective driven, and then use great tools like ShapesXR to quickly create.
I can go.
I had to do it. I use it on a daily basis. I would lack integrity if I didn't.
I have to, or you kind of really feel that.
Yeah. It's here nor there. So, and so then really, create fast prototypes of these designs. Get it in front of kids. Every Friday we test with kids. Every Saturday we test internally. So I think the name of the game is objective driven. Know your pain point, because then it's going to go way faster. Have a way to assess that pain point. So every week when I test with kids, I don't ask them questions like, how do you feel? We're very specific. If we're trying to teach you differential equations better, if we're trying to teach you exponential functions better, the assessments by which we assess that VR experience is very pointed and very, very, very well scoped. And then I think really the last thing I'll say here is I can't tell you how many of my teachers and other content designers, they can't speak freely in front of my engineering team. There's these power dynamics. I'm just gonna say it. I'm a female founder, and a lot of my team are, is a little bit less diverse than I would like, and I work really, really hard to make sure that the voices of my content devs and people who may not have the same social capital in the room are heard at the same decibel as everybody else, because if not, we're going to get, yet again, a myopic tool that's not reflecting the market and reflecting our end user. So it's nothing that has not been said before, but it actually takes active daily work to do this well and kind of maintain those relationships. So just something to put in the hat of thinking.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, one thing that we do in the team with, to make sure everyone has a voice, and some people are shy, and especially more, on Zoom or on Slack, or you do a Slack huddle, and maybe you'll only hear 1 or 2 people talk, is to really make sure they take turns and just do it that way. We do that almost every morning, and then that just kind of gives a voice to everyone, so everyone can, say what they have to say. Some of them say it kind of like this, but they actually say it, and sometimes you get just really valuable insights from just those quick 5-minute meetings every morning. That's what we do.
Right. Before we pivoted to ShapesXR, we made those kind of close to 100 discovery interviews to understand the pain developing for VR and AR. And the biggest pain we realized was that designers were frustrated that everything developers were doing, they were doing on guessing. Because you were designing using some tool, and then the developer was adding 50% of his guessing, and then what you get, you can't change it because so many money spent already on this development cycle. So the whole idea is that today, with available tools out there and collaborative tool that you can really, the designer can pitch to developers, developer in this medium, in 3D, almost close to final prototype, is insane. I mean, we became agile just when we started to do it that way. Before that, it was not really that agile. And the prototype that we get is really 90% close to the final product that we see out of Unity later on. So as everyone said here, like the earlier designer can pitch to developer in the actual medium, the better. Less guessing, less, let's say, honestly, designers were not that much involved in XR development 5 years ago. It was more like they were doing something in 2D, they were showing some screenshots to developers, and then developers were kind of ideating and building something. So today we want to kind of change that way, and we want to make sure that designers have all their creative power in this XR world. So that's something which is our mission, to enable them to contribute.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. I can't imagine what I would have become had I actually had these tools when I was in middle school, high school, you know, learning in a spatial world, seeing things differently, touching things, moving them. I just wasn't always great reading off of paper and memorizing things, and I think it just opens up a whole new world to people. Let's talk about the dimension for the use case of VR per application. I know we got into this a little bit, but can you discuss the greatest value props?
So for us, the greatest is that, as easy as that, we think in 3D, we ideate in 3D in our mind, then for some reason we have to do that on a flat screen and then back, and we lose all this spatial perspective, whether that's XR or real world. So the major use case is that new media requires you to ideate not in Mirror or Figma Jam on flat screen, but rather in the actual medium, and that like prototyping-wise, you can go very far. You can actually run the user test and ship better products to market faster. So productivity. And here I want to say the following. So, I mean, I know that entertainment and gaming still kind of drive this market for sure. So, and productivity and like what is really VR for work, there is not too much understanding out there, you know, not among investors, not in the ecosystem. And when people think about VR for work, it's training. You put on a headset and you go through some training experience. So, but what I want to share is that one number, 1,172 minutes during 1 week. This is the average time. Thank you for that. So this is the time that one design lead at Fortune 100 company spent during 1 week. So every day this person spends on Quest in ShapesXR, so 4 hours per day, every day, week over week. So can you imagine? So it means that it's really finally you do your work. So like what was sending emails via internet when it's all started, I don't know, 30 years ago. So it's happening. So you can accomplish your work. So this is VR finally becoming your everyday tool to do stuff. And I don't think if you can play a game 4 hours per day, every day, in a headset, probably unbelievable. But you can if you see the result and if it's your kind of work tool. So, I mean, the major use case, I think that, I mean, this kind of, if you find this really practical and important use case to do your job done, to have your job done for what you get paid, I mean, you can spend hours, and this is huge.
Yeah, I completely second that. Also for Zoe, we know that, you know, the most successful of our users are the ones that are actually making money because they're using it and they're building something that's significant for them, right? So, for example, there's a whole group of psychiatrists that are using Zoe to build experiences for autistic patients that they have from Poland. So I don't know, she sent me a mail saying, hey, I've been using this for 6 months and now I have all those modules that I can sell, and I think that's amazing. And so when you think about why, you know, if you're a founder, if you're thinking about XR and all of this metaverse stuff, I think that if you really find the use case that resonates with, you know, the audience and your users, then they're just gonna pick it up and they're gonna use it for something that is valuable to them. It's not gonna be just, oh, what can I find to do on my Quest today? You know, let's maybe play a bit of Beat Saber for 3 minutes, but they'll just literally use that as a tool, and I think that that's just amazing that we can see that now, and it's really happening. So.
When I think about value prop, I think about a student. So there was one of our students, his name is Chidendu. He had taken 2 years of algebra and came in, had gotten A's in the classes, came in on his pretest, gets a 24%, does our modular and exponential functions. It took him about 47 minutes to do part 1 and part 2, to experience a problem and then mathematize it. And takes his post-test, different tests, same standards, gets it 89% immediately, looks at us deadpan in Zoom and goes, that's it. That's all it took for me to understand what an exponential function was. You guys put me in 2 years of math. I had no idea what it was. And that is the value prop of VR, where what we believe, Algebra 1 is an 11-month course right now. And today, 80% of kids in the US are not proficient in algebra. So we're putting them in hours and hours and hours of ineffective instruction, and they're able to kind of go in, experience something, have a real life connection to what they're learning, believe in it, move. There's this great piece of research I'm sure we use it a lot with students with different disabilities, is the moment you cross your midline, that kind of kinesthetic action or something you learned in that moment, it goes into your long-term memory. So we're also finding in our early research is that things that kids just kind of forget within a few weeks of learning it, it's now going into enduring memory. So I think the value is just enormous. The big question is, how can we memorialize it? How do we communicate it, and how do we get it into our institutions at scale? I think that's the intellectual problem now. Everybody in this room and in this conference knows the value prop of VR in education, but we have to operationalize it. And I think that's the work of 2022.
Awesome. So we're just about to jump into Q&A, but one last quick question, just 5 words. What is the future of VR? Boom.
5 words?
Well, whatever you want to do.
The new Chromebook in schools, let's be real.
There we go.
That one works.
Mixed reality plus cloud streaming.
Right. You missed like 5G
and economy,
Metaverse
economy.
and creator
Okay, so
economy
there's
and then crypto.
It should be like self-sustaining economy and revenue streams and like something like that.
Okay, I think that was 6 or 7, but that's good. All good. Any questions? There's bright light, so I think great.
Thanks for
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. How you going? Thanks
Hey.
very much for sharing your insights. Pretty unsexy question, but can you tell us about how you settled on your business model and your pricing models, and and how the market responded, and was that an iterative sort of approach?
That's a great question. And that's why I have said
Sexy.
it's a long game. So, right now we are hiring our first salespeople, and it's hard. It's harder than hire engineers and then hire, let's say, designers. Why? Because you can't show them, 2 years of revenue streams, and it's like, not because of new product, but because of XR, and B2B model. So it's super important for any company like us to be on visible store, like we are on Quest, and this helps a lot to generate leads. But this is not the revenue stream for us. We think that VR for productivity, consumer market, honestly, is not there yet. Beyond gaming, just really productivity things. It's more like B2B today. In 2 years, it will be B2B2C. And B2B wise, companies started to explore much more intensively. And then this is a SaaS model, PaaS model, because it's still like a platform. Still, you have to develop market on your own. You have to educate your client and customer. You have to disagree. You have to explain. And we actually sell the future still to them. But it's happening. And the market is niche to some extent, that's for sure. And that's why you still have to be pretty lean before you start growing like crazy. But it's changing. The deals are happening, which is like awesome,
So to answer that question directly, so we're a SaaS business, but for year 1 and year 2, it's more like 50-50 software and services, and that can be like a death wish for valuation, but it's totally worth it because we need people to invest in the implementation models, and so it's 50-50 today. It's going to go to 70-30 next year and 80-20 the year after. But if you try to get to 80-20 in year 1, you're going to get shoddy implementation of VR, and it doesn't matter at that point. So that's one thing I would say on business model, and the second thing I would say is really be mindful of your beachhead. So I made a categorical decision, like K-12 is my background. I knew how much money was coming into the system, and I went after that. And even though higher ed, there's so many other things that we could have done, I knew where my fast wins were, and I stayed focused on my beachhead market, and there are a lot of adjacencies that we'll be able to grow into. So those are kind of just two top-notch things of it's going to be a little bit less of a software business in year 1 and 2 of VR. It's going to be more customer success, but it's totally worth it to get you to that ratio that you want, over-invest in it rather, and then really kind of know your beachhead.
Anyone else have a question? Hi.
Hi. Just had a question in terms of what are the key learnings you've found over the last few years in terms of building out your technical team and the rest of your company actually, so you can get your product out as fast as possible?
I think for our perspective, as far as team, is to get quicker to a product that you can go out there and and start selling. Go beyond the prototype, at least for our side. For a while, we just had basically a VR app, but we didn't have anything around it. And so this year we focused on all the other things around it. So things like dashboarding, or onboarding people better, or just having those features that and we're a consumer app, so consumers are used to have certain types of functionalities for sharing the content that they're building, or types of interfaces they're used to use. So instead of just focusing on building more features into our app, we just started focusing on all the other things, and that made such a huge difference on adoption, actually. So really big difference on adoption now for us, just because we made those little focuses on little things we thought weren't that important at the beginning, but simple things: tutorials, dashboards, being able to see things on the web, being able to see other things in VR, and we also have a mobile app, and all those 3 platforms, they're really thought out for what they are. So you're going to have some functions on the web that you won't have in VR, because VR is really good for one thing, and then mobile is really good for another. So really think about that ecosystem, but that really helped us for building something that is going to be able to scale quicker over the next year.
Yeah, so coming to technical team, when you're hiring Unity C# developers, most of them want to build games, many of them. And you don't want to hire them because after, 6 months, they're like, I want to build levels, I want to have strategy games done. We really need to identify your people who are willing to make the software that will become the standard way, like the next Adobe, right? It's not easy, And still, until you become 100 people, and we are just pretty small still, not that small anymore, but we still request everyone to have this entrepreneurial spirit, even developer, because you can do differently optimization, let's say, for standalone headset, especially if you allow 20 people to co-create in real time, right? In order to really do this kind of insane so that it works amazingly, that it's magical, even developers have to be very creative and very entrepreneurial, really have to care about what they're building. And there are lots of technical challenges when it's this collaborative, cloud-based, real-time thing, because it's not just shooting game, right? So you build in 3D, you bring in stuff, the performance is limited that you can get on the standalone headset, and there are kind of lots of other challenges. So again, for me, it's important that it's the person who wants to build software rather than games, or has a solid vision how to grow, that it is very creative, even if it's a developer, because you really have to outperform to build this type of tool.
Yeah, I can second that. We had one of our initial dev who left for Ubisoft because he really wanted to build games, and after a year he was like, no, I can't do this anymore. And and now we have just the most amazing lead. And that makes a huge difference. He knows, things in and out, and passionate, and a little bit of entrepreneurial, but don't talk to him about business. He's always telling me, oh, thank you, I can just focus on the code. I'm so happy, things like that. But yeah, think about that when you're building your especially at the beginning, your core team needs to be super motivated to build the right thing, basically. It's not easy to find, though. I wouldn't say it's easy, right? It's not.
Totally. Especially, I think I'm the unsexiest application up here. But, a few things. One is that early on, I had to find developers who were also design-minded. So going back to what you're saying, they had to be mission-oriented. They had to believe in what we were building and for whom. and they had to have that eye to design and interaction design as well. Otherwise, things were too bifurcated, and you had people saying, "Just tell me what to do," and you don't get that sort of creative problem solving early on. Another thing I really struggled with, and I continue to struggle with, is the perennial question of startups: is when do you optimize, right? So initially, we were building a lot of content. So when do we start modularizing our internal animation frameworks, our internal content dev tools? And what I realized is we just had to build without thinking at all about scale to understand the range and the scope of our product. And it's only until very, very recently that we actually began to kind of mechanize our internal processes and automate. So that's one thing I would also just venture that I learned it the hard way. Like, don't optimize too early. Don't try to scale too early, because if you don't know your product well enough to do that. And I'm also kind of the youngest startup on this team, so it's top of mind.
Just a very, very quick here. So there are few developers who know how to build prototypes. Most developers want to build the final thing, and this is a big mistake the mistake that I did, like first 2 years, and there are only like super senior developers, like senior in mindset and their bravery to build kind of probably ugly thing like prototype, but you can test it before you spend, again, months on polishing it. And for that, you need entrepreneurial background as a developer, right? So, and it's not that easy to find them.
But we're in like the opposite, where, we're not talking to each other, but so that's what I was able to do, is I had to get those prototype-minded people to build and iterate the core mechanics that we need to deliver to get our market. But now, that team is not well equipped to build the production quality product. And so we're in this like constant mode of constantly leveling people up and reshuffling folks, which is the work of the CEO ultimately, is to put everybody in the right place.
All right, I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise. Thanks to all of you for coming out today.
On panels, it's hard to entertain people,
I know.
You don't show like funny videos.
We're not so fun, but we're trying.
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Lovely to meet you all. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.